Hey you guys, it's Peter, and welcome to my channel, Peterisms, where I tell stories of my life and just little things I've learned as I have grown into the person that I am today. And I am so in love with this channel, you guys. I am having so much fun with it. It's growing really fast. People seem to really like it. I love to share little pieces of my life, and it's been so much fun to have you guys share back with me things that have happened to you. I've gotten so many emails, not just for my Dear Peter advice video on Fridays, but just just emails and comments and tweets and direct messages about this channel and about things that you are going through currently or things that you've gone through. And it's just been awesome. I so love this channel so much. And a couple days ago, I did a video talking about my mother's passing. And on there, I said that I was going to turn around the next day and I was going to talk about the week of the funeral because I thought it was a really important video to do to kind of help people through that grieving process. That night on my vlog, I went in, if you watch my vlog, Peter Vlogs, it's listed below, and I extensively talked about it. And I thought to myself, you know what, I'm going to save that video for like a week or two. But I am going to do that as part of a series of talking about grieving and, what happens the week of the funeral, what happens 2 weeks later, what happens like 6 months later, and helping people get through the process of grieving. Because next to addiction issues, it's the number one piece of advice that people ask from me is, how did you get through this and how do you grieve this? And, I got to where I'm at with grieving, not just because of my mother's death, but because of friends that I've lost, because of other family members that I've lost. And, each experience is completely different. So that video will be coming. I just want you to know. Today, I am going to respond to an email that I got. And I'm not really sure that the email was necessarily asking me to turn it into a video. So I'm going to keep this person anonymous on here. And but I really liked what they shared in here, what the question that they asked, because in talking a lot about addiction, we don't talk about long-term sobriety, and I don't think there's a lot of great books out there about long-term sobriety and people that have been sober for a long time and how to handle that, or even, just like day-to-day things that happen in early sobriety. And, I always tell people, go to treatment if you can afford it or you can find one. Go to 12-step meetings, get a sponsor, read the basic text of whatever program you're in, and listen to the people around you, and stick with the winners. And that's what I was taught, and that's what I do. And years ago, I heard this saying, and it's hard to fall off the wagon when you're sitting in the middle of it. And so I've always just tried to stay in the middle of the wagon and, know a lot of people in sobriety, have a lot of friends that are in sobriety, be very active in sobriety. And that way, I'm never that far away from it, if that makes sense. But this question is important, and it kind of plays off that a little bit, I think. So this is the middle of it. She says, I do have a question. I noticed that Alex enjoys a glass of wine at night and keeps his wine stash right there in the kitchen. What I thought to ask, if it's okay, is as you are in recovery, how do you manage the temptation, if any, seeing the wine or even smelling it on your partner to keep from having a drink? Do you recommend the non-alcoholic drinks out there, or would that also trigger in wanting to drink the real stuff? Just thought to ask, or after over 20 years being in sobriety, the taste and desire is just gone. I know combating addiction is a daily struggle, perhaps more than for some, perhaps more than others. And yes, addiction is a daily struggle. So I want to address this from several different issues. And when I say this, it's very, very important that you know that this is just my experience, okay? I am not speaking for any 12-step program. I am not speaking for anybody else's experience. Everybody's experience is completely different. And I've had different rules in my life at different times of my life, if that makes sense. The rule that Alex and I have is this, is that I do not care if he keeps a bottle or two of wine in our house. Typically, if he's going to drink, like watching TV or something like that, he'll say like, hey, do you care if I bring a bottle of wine home? And I'm like, no, I don't care. What I don't want is a case of beer in the fridge, a case of beer in the, in the garage, a full bar of vodka and rum and all that other kind of stuff. And we don't have that in our house. And there are people that I know that are sober, that are in recovery and work very, very strong recovery programs, that their partner is not in recovery, and they do have full bars in their house, and they host parties where there's alcohol and things like that. And I think that's fine. That's their business. And, I think for each of us, we have to gauge where we're at certain times. I cannot honestly remember the last time that I felt a desire or a compulsion to drink or use a drug because of how I was emotionally feeling, if that makes sense. That being said, I can remember the last time that a beer sounded good next to a pool, or a glass of wine sounded good out at dinner, you know? Or, hey, I haven't ever had this drink, and walking down the liquor aisle at Walmart, and there's stuff that was not even out when before I got sober. And so that kind of curiosity or interest, I think, will always be there. As long as I am staying up to date on my sobriety and taking my medication, so to speak, by going to meetings and having a sponsor and working a 12-step program and having friends around me that are in sobriety, an active recovery program, I think I'm safe. I hope I'm safe. And, all I have is today and, a daily reprieve for my addiction. So I have to make sure each day that I'm okay. And if you hear me talk in my vlog, you know that I'm a highly spiritual person. And so, I meditate every day and pray every day. And those things are very important to me as well. I also go to a lot of meetings and I'm very active. I've had a couple friends of mine that actually went back out and started using, and one of them lost a lot after, many, many years, double-digit years of sobriety. And, the way that it started to happen was, I think, distancing themselves from needing sobriety and then surrounding themselves with people that didn't know that they were sober and didn't understand how it could affect them. And then I think that our minds are so sick as addicts and alcoholics that we convince ourselves that we can use one, and there's a saying that says that, I took the drink and then the drink took me. And I really fully believe that. So today, it doesn't bother me to have Alex have a bottle of wine in the house, things like that. I will tell you a funny story. A couple years ago, like 3 or 4 years ago, he and some girlfriends went to the pool and they took 12 beers or something with them, and there was one beer left. And so Alex brought it home and he had it in the fridge. That entire summer, I mean to tell you, from June to August, that beer stared me down. It was in the fridge. I mean, I would just look at it every day. Because you have to understand, as an alcoholic and an addict, I do not understand people going and having one beer and stopping. That makes no sense to me whatsoever, because I'm chasing the buzz. I'm chasing the high. You know what I mean? So the reality is that somebody having one beer makes no sense to me whatsoever. It just doesn't. Just like for you out there, that if you don't drink or use drugs and you don't have a compulsion, an obsession, or an addiction, it probably doesn't make any sense to you, why we can't stop, if that makes sense. And the whole saying of 1 is too many and 1,000 is never enough. It's like, I can't get enough, right? So it's two sides trying to explain to the other person what makes sense. And, I finally said to Alex, I said, are you going to drink that beer? I'm one day I came home and I was so shitty, and I go, are you going to drink that beer? And he goes, what beer? And I go, the beer that's been in the refrigerator all summer long. And he goes, I didn't even know we had a beer in there. I go, it's been in there all summer long. Are you going to even drink it? And he goes, just throw it away. I don't even want it. I go, you throw it away. It's your beer. So it's so funny because, if you're an alcoholic, you notice that shit. But, if you're a non-alcoholic, you don't. And I think what bothered me about it was, that summer, I just was everything was going great. Sometimes for me, when things are going really good, I want to fuck them up as an alcoholic and an addict, because I live better in chaos than I do in serenity. And that's something I really, really had to work hard on, was, living in serenity and living in serenity well. So, anyway, it's funny. I think that summer, I craved this idea of just laying by the pool and having a beer. And the reality is, I have to remind myself that's never going to be the truth for me. It just isn't. And, a lot of times people ask me, you got sober so young, do you ever wonder if you're not an alcoholic? And the thing is that recovery is a gift. Sobriety is a gift. I have an amazing life. I have a life beyond my wildest dreams, honest to God. If I got what I deserved before I got sober, I would be dead or in prison, period, end of story. And I am not willing to trade the chance of me maybe not being an alcoholic so that I can drink beer next to a pool for the life that I have today. It is just not worth it to me. And, so, for me, the drinking is just not that big of a deal around me and things like that. Now, I set very firm limits and boundaries, and if you watch my vlog, you hear me talk about this. I don't chaperone, I don't babysit, okay? That doesn't mean that I don't mind if somebody wants to go out and drink, they say to me, hey, do you mind if I'm drinking? I'll say, hey, I'll drive. No, that's no problem. No, whatever, I will not get in a car with somebody that's been drinking and driving, period, end of story. My life is not ending that way. So, I think it's important for all of us to have limits and boundaries. I don't go out as much anymore, and if I do, I don't stay out late, because about 12:31, the beer starts hitting, the drinks start hitting, and people change, and I get to have a lot of those conversations, well, my sister, and I'm just no, this is, if you want to call me and ask me, but you're not going to remember this conversation the next day, so I don't really need to be here. And It was kind of funny because a couple years ago, Alex had like a birthday party dinner, and then it went into like this club VIP section. And he was like, babe, if you don't want to stay, you don't have to. It means a lot to me that you even came out for like, one Diet Coke or whatever. And I was like, no, I can stay. I'm dancing. And I like to go out. I like to dance. I like to have a good time, And the thing is that if I am working a recovery program, then the desire to use has been lifted from me. It should be. And my mother, she got sober 6 months after I did. I can tell you that at like a year sober, she truly believed, okay, as a spiritual woman of faith and as an alcoholic in recovery, she truly believed that the desire to use had been lifted from her completely for the rest of her life. She truly believed that. Until the day she died, she continued to attend 12-step meetings and stay sober and work a program. But she believed the desire had been lifted to her, or lifted from her, and that I am also told, that there's no problem with me going places where they serve alcohol as long as I have a reason to be there, okay? And the reason can't just be I'm bored and I want to sit at a bar. The reason should be I have a friend that's playing in a band, or I'm going there because of a wedding reception, or it's my husband's birthday, or something like that. Does that make sense? So I have to check my motives in any situation that I'm going into. And I remember we were out for his birthday, and he was like, are you having fun? I'm like, yeah, I'm having fun. I was like dancing. You guys, if you watch Melissa, my friend that's in my vlogs a lot of times, she was there too. She was standing right next to my right, and she doesn't drink by choice. She's not an alcoholic or an addict, but she chooses just not to drink. And she was standing next to my right, and we had driven together, so I was going to take her home, and her husband was going to stay out. And this guy was like talking to us, and he was like leaning in, like drunk. He was holding a beer bottle, and the beer bottle like fell and crashed right on my foot. I go, Alex, it's time for me to go. I'll talk to you later. He was like, okay. And so I was like, you're going to take an Uber home, right? He was like, yep, I'll take an Uber home. And his birthday, and an hour later, he was home. And that's changed a lot. When Alex and I first started dating, he was 24, right out of college, and his life was completely different. And it was difficult at first. I had to set a lot of limits and boundaries, and it was really important for me. This is kind of a funny story too. I was sitting here as I was talking thinking like, do I want to share this? Do I not want to share this? My husband does not come from an alcoholic background. He does not understand addiction, and he has been willing to read the books. He has been really willing to watch the movies and understand it. He still doesn't get it because he's not an alcoholic, right? And so at about a year and a half of us sober, I went and I reached out to a lot of my friends that I had drank and used with back in the day. And I said, could you like write me just an email explaining like why, like what I was like back then. This was, you guys, I cannot believe I did this. Like looking back, it was horrifying. I said explaining what I was like back then and why I need to be sober today. And nobody had a problem doing it. Let me tell you, okay? They all did it. And some of the emails were painful to read. And I had Alex read them. He was like, oh my God. He's like, I just can't believe you were like this. I was like, I was not a nice person, okay? I was not a good person. I was selfish and all of it. And so, that was one of the things that I did. Now, if you've made it this far in the video and you're newly in sobriety, this is one thing I do want to say to you. I did not go out to a bar until about a year and a half sober, okay? And I went with sober people. At 6 months sober, my cousin got married, and I went to her wedding. I went with somebody that was sober, and my mom had just recently been sober, I think 15 days at the time. And we had a blast, and we danced and all that kind of stuff. I was also the first person to leave. I talked to my sponsor the whole time while I was there. I went out to the little corridor and called. We didn't have cell phones back then, and called them and checked in and stuff like that. And, it's really important for me to put the statement out there that I really stress that people in early sobriety, I find it difficult how they stay sober going around places that there's a lot of alcohol. And I think it's a question that you have to talk to your sponsor about, have to talk to your counselor, recovery coach about, and say, do you think it's time for me? And if there's any hesitation or you don't check your motives on why this might not be a safe environment for you, don't go. It's just not worth it, And today's time, we're not just talking about alcohol and other substances out there that, yes, then could have killed me. But today I know so many heroin addicts and so many opiate addicts that, they did drink, but drinking wasn't their main thing. But a bottle of wine in the kitchen at 6 months sober could lead to a glass of wine, could lead to 5, could lead to a needle in their arm. And that scares the hell out of me for them. So in early sobriety, the message that I would send to somebody is completely different. I had no alcohol in my house. I had no wine glasses. No alcohol came into my house, period. I was a sober environment. And for my entire first relationship, I was a sober environment. So that was, I met my first boyfriend in sobriety at a year. That story is another one coming up. And then, my first real boyfriend that I was with long term. And then I was with him for 5 years. So for 6 years, years, I had a sober environment. My next relationship, he didn't drink at all, and so it was just kind of not that big of a deal, but people would bring alcohol over every once in a while. I'd say, if you bring it, but take it with you. I don't, you know. So I think it's a thing that you have to be comfortable talking to people about, and a lot of times, I don't know that those of us in sobriety, especially early in sobriety, are willing to fight for our own sobriety, if that makes sense, and set those limits and those boundaries, but I wouldn't be afraid of that. Here's the thing today, okay? And a lot of people won't understand this, but above my dogs, above my husband, above my marriage, above my parents, above my home, above everything comes my sobriety. And I will fight anything and anybody for my sobriety. Do not come for my sobriety. Do not come for my sobriety. I have worked too hard, and everything that I have in my life is based off of my sobriety. So if anybody puts my sobriety in risk, you are out of my life immediately. Immediately. Period. End of story. So it's not so much to me the fact that I have wine in my kitchen. It's the fact that if I would say to Alex, I want it gone, if he would challenge me on that, which he never has. And I won't say that there haven't been times when I've said, I don't want any alcohol in the house, because there have been times that I have felt that way, you know? And I think it's something that you have to be willing to talk to the people around you and have a support system in, but you have to be willing to fight for your sobriety and your recovery at any cost. Some people will never be introduced to sobriety or recovery. So if only one person hears this message that I send out on all of my videos talking about me being sober, then one person got exposed to something that somebody else won't, and that's my only hope out of doing all this and talking about my story, you know? So I hope that helps you guys a little bit to understand better what my life looks like. And if you have any questions about that, leave it in the comment section below, and I might do more videos on it. I love you guys, and I will talk to you later.